Let's talk about attack types in Unicorn Overlord. So there are several different types of attacks. There are melee attacks, there are ranged attacks, there are column attacks, there are row attacks, there are unblockable attacks, and there are combinations of those. So to begin, let's look at the most basic type of attack, which is just a melee attack. So in this case, Elaine is going to be demonstrating the melee attack here. So melee attacks can target any unit on the front row, and they can target the back row if the front row is gone. So for example, he can attack this thing on the front row, he can attack Auk in this case. Let's have him fight Auk. So even though Auk is in the back row, he can still be targeted because there's nothing in the way. So melee attacks are very straightforward. They can hit the closest row, and if something is in the way, it cannot hit the thing behind. So if you have any enemy units in the way, you cannot get your attack to the back unless it is a ranged attack. All right, next we have column attacks. So let's select this. Let's make sure you should have our attacks on. I've disabled the attacks of these enemies just to demonstrate, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't disable Travis. Disabled everyone else. All right, so that's a lane attack or a column attack that hits up to 2 things in this case. Now, it allows us to hit through the thief. The thief still evades, but we hit through the thief and hit the backline. Now, one thing to note about lane attacks or column attacks is that if you have them fight something that blocks, it changes the result a bit. So typically what will happen is the unit in question, the blocker in question, will block like this, and then the blocking unit takes a little bit of damage, typically very low damage, and actually defends the other unit. So you might be thinking, oh, I can lane attack through this like guard, and the correct response, or the correct answer is no, you cannot. You cannot hit through the guard if they have block, so you will not hit through that. There's also sweep attacks or row attacks. So let's do this. Let's take Travis's group here. Just remove Travis. We can see that. So this is a melee attack, but it can hit because there's nothing in the way. So let's check Bruno hitting into Lamine's unit. So he's going to do a big row attack here. Now this only can hit the back row because nothing is in the front row. If there's something in the front row, he would be forced to fight whatever's in the front row. And he is kind of inaccurate. The class he's on is quite inaccurate. All right, now let's throw Travis on there just to show. Let's see. I guess it doesn't matter. We can throw Bernice in here. So he's going to be forced to attack the front row now. Now there is a way around this, and it is using a different class. Bernice may kill him. Okay, good. He tanks it. So about to say, because he's a lower level, so he might die here. All right, then he's forced to attack whoever's in the front. Now, when it comes to attacking the front and there's guards, so this is where things get interesting. So let's change. Let's add like a generic to the front here that cannot block specifically. Let's add one of these. Oh, it's already full. Oh, okay, let me remove. Or I can just switch this. Let's switch him over here. All right, so if you row attack the front and there's a guy blocking, you kind of run into the same problem as you do with the column attacks when someone blocks, and you'll see in a second. So he does the wide smash, but then the guy hops to the other unit, blocking, negating the attack on the second unit, and then absorbing the damage. So AoE attacks, you have to know when they're useful, and when there's enemies that can block, they can greatly reduce the effects of these attacks. All right, now let's look at a ranged row attack, which is what the Griffin does. So this is a little bit more interesting. So if we go to formation here, let's say he's in the back now. And then let's check her rules. Let's have her attack the back row. So high swing is a ranged row attack. So what this does is you can still attack either row. So you can attack the back row even if there's someone in front of him, like in front of the back row. But if there's people that block, they can still help. So it's like something to take note of. So we'll demo this one. So we'll show her fighting. She might get one shot by Bernice if Bernice hits. Let's see. All right, high swing, back row. Hits all three for big damage. Front row doesn't matter. Following slash kills a 34 hit rate, still connects. But she can completely bypass Bernice or a thief or whatever and just attack the back row directly. However, if she fights Lloyd's unit this time, and she goes for the back row attack, he will block one of them. So guards add a bit of complexity when dealing with these like row and column attackers, because they can typically undermine or undo the attack just by blocking, especially with column attacks. So you have to be really careful with how you execute these attacks. We also have generic range attacks. So in this case, we'll have Rolf attack this. So he can shoot the backline directly here. There's nothing Bernice can do about it. She can't block, so he can just attack whoever. In this case, he's targeting Bernice. I can change his rules, though. Let's do that really quick. Let's just have him prioritize backline. Doesn't really matter. Back row. Alright, so same thing. He's going to be fighting this group. He can prioritize the back row directly. They're just passing, so I told them to do nothing. So he can just shoot whoever in the back row he wants. He does die because he's underleveled, so... Now, mages can do the same, but with magic. Now, there is an issue when fighting armored that Archer has specifically. So you can target the back row, but tanks just completely kill your damage.
Temporary fix.
So just like with all these AoE attacks, like the rows and the column attacks, your damage can be greatly reduced by the presence of enemies who block. So you have to be very careful. You might be thinking, oh, I'm gonna kill their mage as soon as the battle starts, but then it gets blocked, and you're like, oh. Now, there are ways to get through armors. Mages are much better at targeting armors, or killing armors, rather. So let's say he wants to prioritize back row, the mage, and he has ranged magic, right? So we'll have him fight this. So he's gonna prioritize back row. It's gonna get blocked, but magic melts armors and typically kills them in a single spell. So even though he goes for the block, he takes big damage. He's set on fire. He did catch a heal. He gets manual healed. He actually might not die here. So he does survive. Now, interestingly, I think if we attack him directly, he doesn't get a damage reduction. Let's double check that. Yeah, so if we attack him directly, I think there's a chance he can block it with his guard rate. So let's actually change that. Now, because they have a cleric that keeps the hoplite alive, let's just prioritize front row now. Alright, so we're gonna have this fight this. Now, when you guard, it reduces damage. Alright, so now he's just attacking him directly. He does not kill still, he doesn't have enough damage. Maybe if he was a higher level, he'd get him. But you get the idea. Alright, then we have armored units, or armor killer units, rather. So these are quite good at hitting through armors, the warriors. Now, she can only melee attack, right? She can't range attack. She can't hit through to the back line if there's something in the way, no matter what. But she can do this. She can guard seal and do pretty big damage. She was not able to kill, unfortunately, but she did disable his blocking, so now other units are free to attack. So this kind of opens up the armor. But these basic attacking styles are going to be key when you're making your team. So you have your basic melee, your column attackers, your row melee attackers, you have your ranged row attackers, and then you have your ranged attackers, and then of course you have your basic armor penetration melee units, and these can kind of get through armors and shields better than other things. Same thing with the witch. The witch is kind of similar to the wizard, except she can freeze, which is in most cases a little bit more valuable if you're not killing either way. But these are the basic attack styles. Now, some of these are stronger than others. So for example, Gladiator is typically just much worse than Griffin, because Griffin can just target the back line And typically the front line is full of things that tank. So Gladiator kind of has a hard time damage-wise, whereas Griffin can just target squishy things and kill them immediately with the right build. And Soldier is also decent because typically not everything has a tank on its team. So if it can poke, like, you know, a column, that can be more valuable than a row, because sometimes there's only like one enemy in the front row. So hitting through the backline can be very useful. Also, weapon types matter too. Like the Gladiator is pretty low in accuracy. The Griffins are decent in accuracy. These are decent in accuracy. The Archers, I feel like Archers are the worst in terms of damage output because Mages can target the back row and kill tanks, and Archers typically cannot, or they have trouble with tanks. Their best bet is to like Flaming Arrow a tank, but it's still worse damage than a Fireball. So generally I prefer these to Archers, and these can be situationally decent. The Warriors, I don't really run them much though. I'd rather have a Mage, honestly, or like a Witch. I think Wizard and Witch are definitely the best thing for killing armors right now. But yeah, that's it for this basic attack type breakdown. Hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to drop a comment as to what you think about this, or if there's anything you feel like I missed. I'm not going to go over every single unique attack, like for example like counterattacks or things like this in this video. But yeah, definitely subscribe if you enjoyed this. I'll see you next one. Peace.